Most people think quitting a high-paying job early is reckless, but sometimes it's actually the most logical move you can make. Let me tell you about two people I've met. The first spent about 15 years in tech. Nothing flashy, just steady work, aggressive saving, maxing retirement accounts, and staying consistent. By his early 40s, he had roughly $750,000 invested. Then he walked away, took a job that paid less than many people's side hustles. The reaction was brutal. Friends whispered, family worried. From the outside, it looked like he'd thrown everything away. What they missed is that his money no longer needed him. Even if he never added another dollar, simple compound growth would quietly turn that portfolio into several $1,000,000 by traditional retirement age. His future was already funded. Stress, deadlines, and golden handcuffs were optional. He didn't retire. He downshifted. Now contrast that with someone else. A high-powered professional, massive income, long weeks, on paper extremely successful. He already had well over $1 million invested, yet he couldn't slow down. He told himself he needed just a little more before he could relax. Except when you run the math, his portfolio was already on track to grow into multi-millions even if contributions stopped entirely. He wasn't working for security anymore. He was working out of habit and fear. These two people crossed the same invisible threshold. Most investors never realize this line exists. It's the point where you stop being the primary driver of your wealth and time takes over, where your savings rate matters less than your patience, where your future becomes statistically inevitable. And here's the wild part. A lot of people are way closer to that line than they think. They just don't know how to calculate it. So in this video, I'm going to show you the exact moment when retirement stops being a goal and starts becoming a mathematical outcome. You'll learn how to calculate your own coast number, why this changes how you think about work, and why pushing harder after this point often gives you less freedom, not more. Before we get there, you need to understand one core idea. Your wealth grows using two forces. Think of it like pushing a heavy object uphill. At first, it's all muscle. Every dollar you save matters. Miss a month and progress stalls. Your paycheck is doing almost all the work. Your investments are small, quiet, and unimpressive. But over time, something flips. The money you already have starts pulling its own weight. Then it starts pulling more than you do. Eventually, it becomes the dominant force, so powerful that even if you stopped pushing entirely, momentum would still carry you forward. That flip has a name. It's the point where the growth from your investments single year exceeds what you can realistically contribute from your income. When returns beat effort. For example, if you're investing $20,000 a year and earning a long-term real return around 7%, early on your contributions, but as your portfolio grows, that balance shifts. At a few $100,000, returns start matching your savings. At higher levels, they blow past it. Eventually, your yearly contribution barely changes the outcome. That's the moment most people don't recognize and keep grinding long after the math says they don't have to. This is why people say the first few $100,000 is the hardest money you'll ever make. Not because it builds character, not because of mindset, because the math is stacked against you early on. At the beginning, wealth building feels like dragging something impossibly heavy uphill. Every dollar requires effort. Miss a month of saving and progress stalls. You are doing almost all the work. But somewhere between a few $100,000, the exact number depends on your savings rate, something changes. The weight starts pushing back, momentum kicks in, you're no longer forcing progress, you're guiding it. This is where understanding the crossover point unlocks a powerful thought experiment, one most people are afraid to even consider. What if you stopped contributing at different stages? Let's keep the assumptions simple and realistic. You invest $20,000 per year. Your portfolio grows at 7% after inflation. Your goal is $1 million if you contribute every year without stopping. You reach that million in roughly 23 years. That's the standard path, the one most people assume is required. Now watch how dramatically the timeline changes when contributions stop at different levels. If you stop investing after reaching 100,000, which takes about 5 years, your money still grows. But slowly, compounding alone would need more than 3 decades to carry you the rest of the way. You've added roughly 15 extra years to the journey. At that point, your portfolio just isn't strong enough yet, but stop at 300,000 instead. That takes around 11 years of consistent investing. From there, compounding does the heavy lifting. You reach a million in about 18 more years. Total timeline, 29 years. Only 6 years longer than the full contribution path. Why the difference? Because you crossed into critical mass. Now look at what happens at 500,000. Reaching that level takes roughly 15 years. From there, compounding alone doubles your money in about a decade. You hit 1 million in 25 years total. Let that land. Stopping at half your dollar goal only delays your finish line by about 2 years. This is the part that breaks people's intuition. Halfway in dollars is not halfway in time. Once momentum takes over, contributions matter less and less in determining the final outcome. But this is where confusion usually sets in. People hear this and think, so once I hit that point, I'm done investing, right? Not exactly. This is where two concepts get mixed up, and separating them changes how you think about work, risk, and freedom. So the point is a psychological shift. It's the moment your portfolio grows more in a year than you can reasonably add from your income. It feels incredible, it validates years of discipline, but it doesn't mean you're finished. Coast-FI is different. Coast-FI is the moment when you no longer need to invest another dollar for retirement. Your existing portfolio, given enough time, will grow into your retirement number on its own. You're not retiring early. You're removing pressure. You can earn less. Take a job you enjoy. Start something risky. Work part-time. Or just stop feeling like one bad year destroys your future. Here's how you calculate it, and this is where most calculators quietly mess things up. First, decide how much you want to spend each year in retirement. Let's say $70,000. Next, subtract income that doesn't require selling investments. Social Security, a pension, rental income. Suppose that adds up to $25,000 per year. That means your portfolio needs to provide $45,000 annually. Using the 4% rule, a guideline based on historical withdrawal data, you divide $45,000 by 0.04. That gives you a target portfolio of $1.125 million. That's your finish line. Now comes the part most people never see explained clearly. To find your coast number, you reverse the math. You take your target portfolio and discount it back to today using compound growth. In other words, you ask, how much do I need invested right now so that time alone carries me to that number? Formula is this. Target portfolio divided by 1 plus your expected real return raised to the power of years until retirement. Real return means F. So if you expect 8% nominal returns and 3% inflation, your real return is 5%. For example, if you're 35 and plan to retire at 65, you have 30 years of compounding ahead of you. And once you run that number, you may realize you're closer to freedom than you ever thought. In our earlier example, that gave us a 30-year runway. When you take a $1.125 million retirement target, and discount it back over 30 years at a 5% real return, you land at roughly $260,000. That number surprises people because it means if you're 35 years old and you already have about $250,000 invested, Your retirement plan is fundamentally self-sustaining. You don't need perfect markets, you don't need hero-level savings. You just need time to do what time has always done. That's what Coast FI actually is. Not a promise that nothing will go wrong, but an acknowledgement that compounding is now doing more work than you ever could. You've reached the part of the climb where the slope flattens out. Even if you stop pushing, momentum keeps you moving forward. Let's make this concrete. Meet Sarah. She's 38, works in tech, earns about $130 a year. She's been investing consistently since her mid-20s. Nothing fancy, just about 15% of her income every year. Over 13 that added up to a portfolio of roughly $420,000. Sarah wants to retire at 60. That gives her 22 years of runway. She estimates she'll want to spend $60,000 per year in retirement. Let's assume $22,000 of that comes from Social Security. That leaves $38,000 her investments need to cover. Using the 4% guideline, that puts her retirement target at about $950,000. Now we reverse the math. $950,000 discounted back 22 years at a 5% real return gives a Coast number of roughly $325,000. Sarah has $420,000. She didn't just reach Coast FI, she passed it comfortably. Here's what that actually means. If Sarah were laid off tomorrow and decided to take a lower stress job, something that covers basic living expenses and health insurance, her retirement plan would still work. She could stop investing. That $420,000 alone would likely grow to well over $1 million by age 60. That's not optimism, that's arithmetic, but this is where almost nobody talks about the danger. Reaching your Coast number creates a subtle psychological trap. I call it just one more year. You realize you don't have to grind anymore, but you're so conditioned to optimize, to maximize, to squeeze every drop of efficiency out of life that you keep going anyway. You tell yourself you're just building a buffer, just buying flexibility. And at first, that's true. But then something happens. Income becomes normal, lifestyle quietly expands, a nicer place, a more expensive car, higher monthly commitments, and without noticing, the freedom you unlocked gets absorbed by spending that grew to match your earnings. I've seen people with 7-figure portfolios who are technically financially independent, but feel trapped because their lives now cost 5 figures a month to maintain. They didn't lose money, they lost margin. To be clear, there's nothing wrong with continuing to work. Some people love what they do, some want to build something bigger than themselves, some genuinely enjoy the challenge. That's great as long as you're choosing it. The problem is grinding because you think you have no choice when the math says otherwise. So what do you do with this? First, calculate your Coast number today, right now. Use the formula I just gave you. Target portfolio divided by 1 plus real return to the power of years to retirement. If you're below it, your mission is simple. Keep contributing, automate everything, stay consistent. You're still in the phase where your income is the engine. But if you're at or above your Coast number, you've unlocked something most people never realize exists. Options. You can keep investing and build a bigger cushion. You can downshift and reclaim your time. You can take career risks without betting your future. Just don't make the mistake that quietly erases all of it. Don't let lifestyle inflation eat the freedom you already earned. Because once compounding is working for you, the goal isn't to push harder, it's to decide why you're still pushing at all. Here's the mistake I see over and over again. People reach a financial milestone and immediately redesign their life to consume it. Higher income turns into higher fixed costs. Freedom turns into obligation. Optional work turns into mandatory upkeep. What should have been a release becomes a more expensive cage. I've been self-employed for more than a decade. I've worked closely with tax strategists, accountants, and attorneys who deal with money at a serious level. I'm not talking hypotheticals. I've got real capital invested and real consequences attached to my decisions. And here's the biggest lesson I've learned. Most financial failures aren't caused by bad math. They're caused by human behavior. People underestimate how much psychology drives money decisions. Loss aversion keeps them grinding long after they've secured safety. Hedonic adaptation convinces them that every upgrade is normal. And nobody is ever taught how to tell the difference between wanting more and actually needing more. That's why the crossover point and Coast FI aren't just numbers, they're tests. They expose why you're building wealth in the first place, whether you're optimizing for freedom or validation, whether money is a tool or a scoreboard. There's an old story that captures this perfectly. A tourist is watching a fisherman pull in a modest but beautiful catch. Curious, he asks why the fisherman doesn't stay out longer and catch more. The fisherman shrugs and says it's enough for his family and a little extra. The tourist lays out a grand plan: bigger boats, more crews, expansion, maybe even selling the company one day. The fisherman listens patiently and asks, then what? Well, the tourist says, then you can retire and enjoy your life. The fisherman smiles. That's what I'm doing now. I'm not saying everyone should live that life. It works because the fisherman's needs are simple and his environment supports it. That's not realistic for most people. But the principle holds. After a certain point, more money doesn't buy more freedom. It buys more complexity. Your coast number is the mathematical definition of enough. It's proof that the system you built is strong enough to carry you forward without constant input. So here's a simple framework for using this knowledge wisely. First, calculate your coast number once a year, not obsessively, not monthly, just enough to stay grounded in reality. If you're below it, your role is clear. Keep building. Stay consistent. If you're past it, recognize that the game has changed. Second, detach your identity from your income. This is the hardest part. We're trained to measure our value by productivity and earnings. Hitting coast doesn't mean you stop growing. It means you stop confusing output with worth. Use the security to take intentional risks, not reckless ones. Third, design your life in chapters, not decades. Before coast, your job is to build the engine. After coast, your job is to decide what that engine is for. More wealth, more time, more impact. There's no universal answer, but there is a wrong one: never choosing at all. Because if you don't decide, inertia will, and inertia always chooses more of the same. I'll leave you with this. I've studied how money moves at the highest levels: corporate structures, long-term capital strategies, legacy wealth, and here's the quiet truth. No one advertises. A lot of very wealthy people had already won years, sometimes decades, before they stopped working. They kept going not because they needed more money, but because they never defined what enough looked like. Don't make that mistake. Understand the math, know your crossover point, know your coast number, and when you reach it, make a conscious decision about what comes next. Because compounding quietly creates more wealth than hype ever will. And knowing when you've already won, that's the real edge. If this helped clarify things, hit like and subscribe. Drop a comment with where you're at: 10K, 100K, crossover, or coast. And if you want the calculator that actually runs the numbers correctly, it's linked below.